meeting is being recorded. Okay, recording in progress.
Okay, awesome. Hey everyone, welcome. This is a special occasion. I haven't done one of these podcast / interview hang sessions in a while, but today I have a special friend, Adrian, who is an author of a wonderful book that I reviewed some time ago called Effortless Guitar. And it was published by another friend of ours, Luke of Guitar Vivo. And this book has been out since 2023 and addresses the things that are very important, about talking about tension, about posture, about how to play with basically pain-free, which is an issue with guitar players because guitar is definitely not designed for comfort for the most part, except some of the ergonomic ones. And Adrian is a specialist in Alexander technique. And this session is we're just hanging out. We're going to talk about the book. I'm gonna introduce Adrian. He's going to talk about himself and also his work and what is special about the book, how whether it might be something you want to check out, and also that the fact that they just launched an audiobook version of it. But all in all, this is really just an excuse for both of us to finally hang out and chit chat. So you're more than welcome to hang out with us and chit chat. So Adrian, welcome to my living room, virtually.
Welcome to my living room.
Beautiful.
Morning here, afternoon for you.
Yes, afternoon for you. So just for the benefit of everyone watching this, why don't you introduce yourself, maybe a short introduction about who you are, what you do, and also, who you are and what you do, and
Yeah, sure.
About you.
My name's Adrian, and what I do formally is I'm a teacher of the Adrian'a technique. That's my main profession, and some of you may not be aware of what it is. Before I tell you what it is, I just thought I often forget to mention this, that the context is useful, probably just for credibility and understanding, that the Adrian'a technique is taught in just about every classical music college around the world. Some contemporary ones, less so in contemporary. I know of one in London as an Adrian'a teacher, but certainly all the classical music colleges. So in New York, you've got Juilliard. Here in London, we have Royal Academy of Arts, not the Royal Academy of Arts, the Royal Academy, I think, of Music. Trinity, the other obvious one. Guildford is another one. So it's really embedded. It's a technique that's really embedded within the classical music community, if you like, and more just community, actually, formally, with colleges. But what is it? Yes, what is it? So I seem to change my answer on this every time I get asked, depending on how I'm feeling. It's best known, I'm not saying it's the right answer, it's best known for addressing posture. We're known as the posture guys. It's not something we actually like to be known for, but we're stuck with it. And I think as a profession, we probably haven't helped ourselves in changing that. We've probably helped push that message out. Posture is an element of it, absolutely, but it's not what it is. But to get you in the right ballpark, posture, tension control, things like that. It's about those sort of things. I'm going to give the answer I gave Mike, which then, in retrospect, Mike, who read the audiobook for us, because I did a podcast with him last week. And I like giving this answer because it sounds more interesting, but I think it leaves people confused as well. So although I think it's a nice answer, it's not necessarily always the best one, which is why I wanted to prefix it with something. So what Alexander actually said about his own work is it's dealing with the stimulus of living, which is an incredibly broad concept. And what does that mean? What does it actually mean? Well, it basically means life comes at us, and we often overreact to it. And when we react, we do that in a way that we call psychophysically. So we react mentally and physically as a whole unit. So that's another thing to add, that in the Adrian'a technique, we don't think the mind and body are connected, because that takes two separate things to connect. We think they're just one indivisible whole, functional whole. I don't know, that view, given culturally where you are, compared to where I am, here in Europe, I don't know if you're familiar with the old philosopher René Descartes, but he very much, a couple of hundred years ago, was was grappling with this stuff, and the Catholic Church somewhat leaned on him because they wanted the idea of spirit to remain free and separate. So he kind of separated mind and body. And it wasn't necessarily a cultural norm to do that at the time. I read something in a book I was reading about Isaac Newton, one of his. And although I was reading that book partially because of my interest in gravity and how it affects our posture and everything, I'm also just a bit of a science geek. One of his contemporaries made some comment that was in the book that was very much like psychophysical unity. So, you know, in the West, it wasn't like an idea that was completely non-existent, but Descartes' version of it very much became the dominant one. Now, I'm thinking maybe the further east you go, that dominance reduces, and the idea of psychophysical unity may not feel that unusual. I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, there's so many cultures here, and it really depends. And I think, okay, just talking about musicians in general here, I think the only musicians I know that actually really care, I mean, besides classical musicians, I mean, in general, classical really, and I have to preface that with really good classical musicians, well-trained ones, obviously they care about how they use their body and technique and stuff. But I think my friends, my contemporaries, anyone who actually cares about how their body works, usually has heard it at some point. It's just, you heard, you know, so many, I remember I went to a physical therapist, and the reason I went there was all my musician friends went to the guy. It was just like, he was the guy, you know, when people had pain, it's like, that was the guy. But then that same guy, I mean, he does a combination of like, I think acupuncture and like physical therapy, different modalities. But he has like a 2 or 3 year waiting list. So I don't see him now.
Of course, I used to have a similar problem. I mean, I used to work in IT, and I used to go and see people. Of course, they always make you feel better for a day or two. What none of them ever do is stop you hurting yourself again. And that's where the Alexander technique comes in.
Exactly.
So just to go back, the psychophysical idea. So when we react to something, to a stimulus, we don't just react mentally. There's always an associated outer manifestation of that in muscle tension. And then we often habituate that reaction, and we can't stop doing it. So it just becomes a way of being. And the Alexander technique really looks to address that. It's almost like archaeology. Like, if we sift away all this rubbish that you layered on top of itself, what do we find underneath? So it's not to try and prescribe a correct way of doing something, but find a freer way of doing something without all of the garbage stuck on top. So we don't, you know, I don't tell people what they should do or how they should do something. Should's a weird judgment word, and it's not a very useful word, because whenever you tell someone what they should do, they're going to filter it through their current habits and do an approximation. So yeah, the Adrian technique is, although we're kind of known for posture, in ourselves, what we think about expression, we think it's about thinking and activity, the quality of your thinking and activity, your presence to it. And can we be, you know, maybe be the boss of ourselves a bit more and not let everything else boss us around? So another succinct way of describing the Alexander technique is maybe embodied mindfulness. My profession has a slight issue with that phrase. We're being a bit pedantic, and we are very pedantic as a profession in language. You know, we don't like words like relax, for example, because the everyday person will think, oh yeah, you just need to relax. But the problem with the word relax is most people think relax is this. Well, that's not relaxing, that's just collapsing. I'm relaxed like this. Think of relaxed running, you know, you're not, you need to be relaxed running, having a nice run, but you're relaxed. But, you know, it's vital. It's not collapse. But yeah, embodied mindfulness. And the problem with that phrase, although it's kind of useful for a layman to try and meet someone where they are in the explanation, is how can mindfulness not be embodied because of psychophysical unity? Try having mindfulness without a body. What does that mean? You don't have a functional brain. So, you know, it's embodied mindfulness is a bit tautologous in some respects, well, in every respect, but it works as a phrase to get people on board to what we're about and how maybe we're different. Because we say, oh, that's that thing like yoga. Like, no, it's not like yoga. Oh, that's that thing like physio. Like, no, it's not like physio. So, yeah, that's what kind of separates it It's more educational, changing the way you behave rather than remedial. It's not strictly speaking a therapy, even though there are very good therapeutic outcomes, and even though in a session you can feel somewhat therapized, but it's done through a process of education and awareness.
So it sounds to me. I haven't. The only kind of I've only done in college. I had a class on Feldenkrais method.
Ah,
I had one semester of it, and to be honest with you, all I really remember, is that I had to lie down a lot in class. We were lying. Good thing my socks weren't that smelly. They were okay, but it was an interesting class. I mean, it was a class in Berkeley, and it was called Awareness Training for Musicians. And I think for me, that experience, the thing that I noticed was how much I didn't notice all the tension in my body. If anything, and funny thing is, I think the following semester, I had tendinitis on this hand. Not that semester, but the following semester, I had tendinitis. But I think having taken that class, it helped me be aware of where I was holding different tensions. And
well, it's interesting you said in your body, but you don't have tension in your body. You have tension in yourself, which means there's a mental tension.
Yes.
Because how else does the muscle tighten if the signal isn't sent to be tight? So it's a nervous system issue and a thinking issue, not a physical issue. The physical issue is what you complain about, but it's not the cause.
All right.
Well, actually, that's slightly unfair, because it can be if you don't have mechanical advantage. You might be doing something that's basically too hard to do repetitively. That's where things like posture and ergonomics comes in. I mean, we can have another conversation about ergonomics and posture later, but you have to treat those words very carefully, because ergonomics there's no science behind it, weirdly. Ergonomics for me is common. No, they have a real problem with the industry of being able to evaluate their own effectiveness of their own products. But there is common sense. So for me, ergonomics, when I say the word ergonomics, I'm just meaning a bit of common sense that things aren't intentionally difficult.
That's actually, that's really important. I mean, just from, obviously I don't know about what you actually do, but for me, even as just a player, and just having friends that have injured themselves over the years. I mean, I know so many people who have injured. I find that there's so much. I find that there is really good guitar players have usually, the ones I like, have found the most efficient way to do something that it is fluid. There's a kind of flow to it, because it's not fighting how your hands are. It's not fighting about the size of your hands, the size of your fingers, how they move. You're not awkwardly moving the finger in like some weird way that is making it more difficult. I had a friend, and I remember this, I was very young. I was probably like 18 or something, and one of my seniors, he was one of the fastest guitar players in college, but I could tell that he was playing with so much tension. It was just like super tense right hand, and true enough, I believe after graduating, he injured himself so badly. I mean, I don't think he's doing music anymore, as far as I'm aware. I mean,
shame.
But I don't know how much of it was because he had a playing injury, and I don't know how much of it was his love for tech. I think he went into tech and did something else. But I had another.
When it comes to injuries with musicians, there is this sort of degree of silence that it's not talked about.
Yes. It's serious. And another friend of mine, he was such a good, I mean, he is such a great guitar player, but at some point, this is what happened to his hand. He was, instead of holding the back of the neck like this, no one ever noticed that he was doing this.
Right.
And he did this
putting extra,
so it was
extra tension through
here. Extra tension on this one thumb, and because it's behind the neck, no one really saw it. And I think probably about 5-7 years after graduating, he had to do surgery, and he was out. He was teaching, but he was really not a performing musician, because it took many years of therapy to recover. And also, I've just seen so many people like really badly injure themselves that they can't function, or they have to play through pain. which is why when it's kind of personally, I'm kind of obsessed to find really, I guess, I like finding musicians that sound very good and they look like there's a immense flow
Yeah.
to it. It doesn't look like,
Yeah.
and I think that's which is why if you see in my Facebook, I'm constantly transcribing stuff, especially this past few days. Just it's basically me procrastinating from what I should do, which is finishing. I have to finish an academic paper by this Friday, but I've been lazy.
This isn't helping then.
No, I mean it's okay. But if I wasn't talking to you, I'd probably be transcribing bebop lines or something. But anyway, but I guess the point is that I noticed that some of the really high level players, they're playing with certain fingerings that enable them to play not just fast but smoothly fast, and it is very different than what is taught in a typical, as you can see, this whole place where I have a lot of books and I obviously study a lot from different books, including yours, and but not all the books have the best, I would say, the best fingerings for certain kind of playing, because a lot of people who write books can't play at that level, and so and also there is also, I guess, a disconnect between people with that kind of facility. Not a lot of them can teach well, and also when they teach, they're not necessarily teaching what they actually do, but they're teaching a version of it that is easy to explain in a book, in a short video. It's not exactly, because they might be completely intuitive. They might not know what they're actually doing.
That's really common, and you see that a lot in, on videos by well-known players. That they're obviously not teachers. They don't know why they can do what they do.
Yeah,
because it's so intuitive for them. An example of someone that fits in a totally different music genre, and it's not a player I'm really into. I enjoy listening to bits of it from time, particularly his first album, bits of. But I'm kind of obsessed with just watching and seeing the experience of Yngwie Malmsteen.
Yeah.
Because he has found there's two things going on with him. One is what you were saying, which he has found fingerings and things that just work for him. If you actually I've watched loads of videos of people breaking his stuff down, and when you actually break it all down, despite his draw-dropping technique, you actually realize there's a real logic to it to make it as simple as possible.
Absolutely, and especially when you break it down, you realize that there's another guy related to that. Do you know Mike Marshall, the mandolin player? Have you heard of him?
No.
Okay, no. Mike Marshall. Okay, I don't have the book. I wish I did buy the book when I saw it in California last time. But I remember going through his mandolin book, and all the fingerings are easy. They're not
right, yeah.
And they're not necessarily, when you're doing scalar passages, it's not that he's necessarily playing every note correctly, meaning that when he's doing a sequence, it's not necessarily every single note that theoretically needs to be there, but his fingering is optimized for fluidity. So meaning that it's very logical. And I've seen this again and again with I just transcribed some Cecil Alexander. And if you try there's one of the phrases that I transcribed, his bebop line.
He's a beast, isn't he?
and if you actually try the fingering that he uses on the left hand, it is, I can't get it at his speed, but I can get it much faster than what I would normally do, because it's extremely logical. And I think the best advice I ever got about transcribing was always transcribe the fast stuff, because the fast stuff is the most intuitive of all the things that I've done. Because if you
interesting.
You transcribe, if you want to transcribe Charlie Parker, you transcribe all the double time stuff. Same thing with Cecil.
Because really interesting, because when you posted the Cecil Alexander thing, one of the reasons I've never bought any of his stuff is because I can't play that fast. Certainly not in that idiom.
So
it put me off. But now you made me realize there's a value that, because it's not being overthought, there's a physicality to it that adds flow. So even if you can't do that, it doesn't matter.
I think it the line that I transcribed later I'll just send you the PDF. I mean you saw it on my thing, but PDF you can see better. But the line itself, right, is just when you do it with the picking and his fingering specifically. I'm obsessed with actually trying out a player that I like. I'm obsessed about trying their fingering. I might not agree with it and I might not end up using it, but I always want to entertain why is he using this fingering, and how would it feel for me to experience that? And usually it's like, wow, this is so much easier. I got to show you this one thing. There's one fingering, and I never entertained it prior to watching his videos. Okay, so you know about approach notes, right? Like just chord tone. Okay, so if you study gypsy jazz, usually, okay, let's say A minor. Sorry. Those are the notes, right? So typically you would do if it's chromatic from below, you would do just one fingering 1 2 probably. And on the right hand, it'll just be logically just down, up, down, up, down, up, down.
Yeah.
Very logical, very, very logical. And for the longest time I thought, okay, that makes a lot of sense. But Jonathan Kreisberg, he will actually probably do something like he will actually use the third and fourth finger.
Right.
But it's not that part that's interesting. The interesting part is if you did the other one, the up and below, I would typically do this.
Right.
That's very typical gypsy jazz thing. But Jonathan Kreisberg would do, and then here, then. So
his way of doing that is it's not very visually friendly, is it?
No,
we are very visual as guitarists.
It's not visual. It's not the most, because this it moves
a lot of what we do in guitar is because of the geometry. We think visually.
Exactly, so for the longest time I thought, why would I do that way that Jonathan Kreisberg does it? Because I thought that there's no symmetry in the picking motion, right? And then what I realized is for his kind of playing, which is more contemporary jazz, when you start playing some of the more elaborate chromatic lines, it actually keeps your finger in position much better. So okay, I'll show you. If you have the major one, right? If I did the gypsy jazz way, sorry. So you have, which is all, you know, three notes every time you approach it. But Jonathan would be just this.
I have a feeling, and I could be wrong, that strikes me as the sort of thing that he did as an exercise for himself, that he ended up just getting good at.
He probably did. And the thing is, right, when I think this was the thing for me. Logically, I like symmetrical fingerings because it's just like easy to remember. I don't have to use my brain so much, and I get it into my brain. But when I started trying his thing, it entertained. It was because before that I was not even entertaining that, because I was like, to me there was no logic to doing that. But when I started doing it, I realized that it opened up different line ideas because I was in position. So if you're doing, I would say probably if you're doing more bebop and very chromatic things that are in position, then it can be useful. Now, if you're doing gypsy jazz, which is the harmony is typically much simpler harmony. It's not to say it's not. It's very technically demanding, but harmony is very fast. It's very difficult. But in general, it's not ornamented as much as bebop in terms of how chromatic it is. And so when I tried it, what I realized was, wow, and this happens a lot. We self-censor options for playing, or like what can we do or what should we do, because I've just never seen someone do it that well. And for all I know,
well, maybe the guitar, you do often have to compromise. It's a very compromising instrument.
You have to.
And it's taken me years to get the okay with that, my own brain, that one compromises on the instrument. One has to.
It is a thing, and I think, yeah, I'll tell you another thing that I tried recently was I just did the whole Jimmy Bruno, the 5 position thing, and one thing that I realized, okay, biggest revelation for me musically is that a lot of the things that we need to develop very high facility technique wise, just purely technique, not musicality, but just technique, a lot of it is very obvious, I feel, but
yeah,
very few people actually do it because it's difficult. If like the Jimmy Bruno thing is basically, we have 5 fingerings for the major scale. That's the first concept. Second concept is do it in all 12 keys in all positions. That's it. Now, I finally did it like a week and a half ago, and I was just like, my technique just went. It was just like I was playing things so smoothly, and it's not something that no one has ever told you or me or anyone. Learn the fingerings.
We don't like to do the obvious, do we?
We don't like to do the obvious because the obvious is, number one, very boring and very difficult. But when I did the exercise, I was just like, wow, I wish I did this 20 years ago. I mean, obviously, that's the thing you mentioned about mind body. I think because music is, I mean, especially if you're trying to do music professionally, there is so much. Well, number one is so much misinformation, which is why I appreciate your book, because a lot of people, and I bought a lot of technique books. I bought a lot of technique and exercises, and so much of it is play these notes, not how do you play these notes, which is the more important thing, because you can buy a book and it's like 101 technique exercises and with 0 diagrams, with 0 videos.
To get back when I was talking about Malmsteen and his very logical fingerings, and despite being known as this neoclassical shredder, a large part of his playing style is actually, in terms of fingering stuff, not that alien to a blues rocker, to be honest. Not that alien in terms of his fingering. So he has found the easiest thing to do, but there's another thing he does. I'm obsessed with watching him as an Alexander teacher, because I'm interested in the experience he is having. Not what his technique is, what experience. And there is a person, when he plays, he looks free. And that's something I've made a point in the book quite a lot. I'm not interested in the correctness of someone's technique. I'm interested in the freedom of it. Contemporary guitar, it depends on the genre you're in. I started off in classical guitar when I first picked up guitar at school, and there's a long pedagogy of this is the way you do it. But as you know, I was also very much into classic rock and stuff at the times as well, and then backtracks of blues and jazz and other stuff. And I have no interest in telling Albert Collins or Albert King the correct way to play a guitar because they're doing it wrong. That's meaningless to art. Completely. If Albert King wants to turn his guitar upside down and have a weird tuning, that's fine by me. If Albert Collins wants to tune to an F minor chord and stick a capo up there and have the strap on this shoulder and play with his fingers the way he does, I'm not going to. It wouldn't sound the way it sounds otherwise, and it sounds amazing to me. I love it. I love character and personality. It's an idiom that you're more familiar with, maybe in jazz. That doesn't happen so much. We've obviously got Wes using his thumb. No one was doing that before, and it's obviously idiosyncratic. And you wouldn't teach someone to play like that. But then suddenly everyone's like, "Wow, I want to play with my thumb." It sounds great. I do tend to go for the personality. So I love Grant Green. I'm a huge. He's probably my favorite.
Grant Green is so good. It's so under. Not enough people.
He's kind of the BB. He's kind of like the BB King of jazz guitar. Yeah, I play a lot of notes. Everyone's in the right place. Everyone knows the right place. But I'm so interested in the quality of what someone's experiencing. So, like you said, you've got all these books with all these notes. Well, you can play the notes with wrathful attention. It's not going to get any better because you can have all the correct technique and you can teach them all the correct technique and they can still have an awful experience.
That is so
There
true.
has to be something underlying, not that they're putting their fingers in the right place, not because, do the whole Troy Grady thing and because they're doing the correct escape motions and pitch slanting. And those things are useful, but they're still not the thing, because there are players who do things in very odd ways beautifully.
That's
So
true.
again, I'm personally more familiar with rock. I just am. But if you take someone like Marty Friedman, who used to be Megadeth, well-known player, his weird picking angle.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to tell him to stop doing that. He does it freely. If you can do it freely, I don't care.
That's such a good point.
If what you're doing isn't getting the results that musically you have in your head, then that's a question to answer. Maybe there is another physical, technical way to get the notes out that you want to. But if you're getting the notes out that you want to and it looks weird, but you're doing it freely, I don't care. Because you're not hurting yourself. If you're doing something freely, you're not hurting yourself. And it doesn't all have to be about the Olympics. I mean, the reason I don't post on Instagram is because it's, my guitar playing. Although I'm thinking about it at the moment, I'm actually just practicing a Bach partita, cello partita, that I dragged out of I've kind of known it for years, like 20 years, but I dropped it years ago and I've come back to it from an old Guitar Techniques magazine, UK. You get that? Did you ever get that one, Guitar Techniques magazine?
I have a whole bunch of Guitar Techniques issues here.
Great. So
okay.
I've still got a few. I got rid of loads, but this is one of them. I might put that one out there actually. But it's such an arms race of technique and stuff. And I'm like, I'm nearly 55, and I just don't want to be getting this game. And you had players like Mateus, not Mansuto. Who's the other one? Mateus.
Asato or Mancuso?
Asato.
Okay.
You remember when he burnt out a few years ago?
I remember. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and then he came back a year later and said, "Look, I've been gone because this Instagram thing and what have you, social media. I'm spending all day getting this one perfect performance, and people getting the wrong impression, blah blah blah." And I thought, yeah, it really resonated with me. I just didn't want to get involved in arms race. And the guitar. I mean, I love flash guitar playing. I really do. That's why I like rock music. It's fun, even though I can like B.B. King and all sorts and and Grant Green and stuff. I like the full gamut of it. I can enjoy punk as much as I can enjoy, I don't know, Malmsteen, for example. Or I don't see them much, but when I'm going to see the Libertines next month, British kind of punkish band, I love them. I adore them. If you're not familiar with them, they're great. So I like the full spectrum, but I can really enjoy some technicality. But I enjoy it more if I see a fluidity there, an experience. And that's something, like I say, I keep coming back to this one guy, Malmsteen, even though I'm not his biggest fan musically. There is something rather enjoyable from an existential point of view of the freedom of the experience you're having. An example of someone else that I think the general public feels that way about, who doesn't have good guitar technique by modern standards. No one today would say this guy has good technique and this is what you should copy. But he's one of the biggest icons of all time. And it's someone, and his approach to the guitar, not just sonically, but visually from an experiential point of view, resonates with people. And that's Jimi Hendrix. He's having an experience that there's so much fluidity in his movement.
For sure.
And I'm interested in that, because when that's gone, that's how people hurt themselves.
It's so true. I mean, and I feel that the biggest challenge is that not everyone, see, you notice it because you're an Alexander technique practitioner, so you're gonna look at it from that lens, the experience. A lot of people I've seen, I mean, I've seen people that do open mics, and I was just like, this person is gonna injure themselves at some point, because I can see how the technique that they're using is something that they're fighting against, and is potentially over a long run gonna damage. It's not like, again, I agree with you. I don't think there is a single correct technique. I don't think it exists because every time I've learned a so-called correct technique, within a week or a few months, I'll find another person who does the complete opposite thing, with so much smoothness and relax. It just looks good. It sounds good, and it completely is not what the previous thing I learned. And
I mean, you'd normally say technique is in service of the music, which is true, of course. But I kind of have a slightly different take on it. I think the technique is at the service of your personality.
that's so good.
And, two people can play the same piece of music, but they're two different personalities. That's why we want to hear different people play the same thing.
For sure.
That's why, particularly if you say in the classical world where you are playing the same notes, and people say, I love this particular player, not that particular player. I mean, I actually adore the Chopin nocturnes, but it has to be more relentlessly for me. And I've been through, and there was because I grew up with that. So my dad had it, and Deutsche Grammophon, well-known German classical music record company, and I grew up with that. So I didn't know any difference. I just liked that. But when I wanted to buy it for myself, we'd lost the records. I don't know what happened. I wanted it on CD. Hers wasn't available on the CD at the time. So I just found loads of them. No, won't do. And eventually hers became available on CD. I was like, got it back. And that's why we do that. There's a personality thing that down the technique that something has to come through. And I think finding something that suits your personality and just being okay with it. But I mean, and that's easier said as well when it's contemporary music, because you're not having to follow a score strictly, and it's a slightly different arena, I suppose, to classical music. But certainly within more rock for me and more jazz for you, I think that's a very valid thing. I mean, where's on his thumb? That's his personality. Should you alternate pick, or should you direct pick as Jim Bruno does? I think, again, that's personal. I don't think there's a right or wrong about it. They give different feels and vibes. And it kind of doesn't matter. I think it's asking the wrong question, really.
Yeah, and the thing
And
is... No, sorry, you continue first.
So I had something back in my mind. I wanted to jump back a bit, because something makes sense what we're talking about now. Your experience with Feldenkrais at Berkeley. First, I just wanted to say, Feldenkrais are very much influenced by Alexander, but that's a whole other conversation. I've had two Feldenkrais lessons. I really enjoy them, but they are very remedial. They're not self-empowering, and that's the difference between Feldenkrais and Alexander. Alexander's self-empowering. Feldenkrais isn't. But I've really enjoyed the freedom I engaged with a Feldenkrais process at the time. It's really nice. So would recommend anyone do it just from a remedial point of view. So anyone doing that. But it was the word Berkeley, because is it Berkeley or Berkeley? I can never remember. It's spelled with an E.
Berkeley, the college.
Is it Berkeley or Berkeley?
It's Berkeley, and it's
it is Berkeley.
Yeah, the difference is this: there is actually two places that are Berkeley in US. One is Berkeley, Keley, which is in California, because the place is called Berkeley. The one I went to actually I lived there as well.
Boston one,
The one in Boston is named after the founder or the son of the founder, Lee Burke, the founder.
Oh, right.
Berkeley, which is confusing to everyone, because a lot of people who are not familiar, that they don't know that it's in Boston. They think it's the California one, and
I did.
They will misspell it all the time. But that's the story.
There's a player I want to mention. Julian L.
Oh, Julian's amazing.
What's the thing that we know about him?
Alexander technique.
He's an Alexander technique teacher, and I wish he would say more about it. So I discovered actually recently that a friend of a friend, well, a Facebook friend, knows him personally. I don't know the full connection, but she posted just some pictures of her as a friend on one of the students. I wrote it. It's really nice. She's like, oh yeah. I thought I'm one step removed from Julian. But anyway, he was in the picture with another Alexander teacher. I don't know if they trained at the same time, or maybe she was one of his trainers. I don't know, and I didn't want to pry. But he is an Alexander teacher, and he does occasionally do workshops on it. At Berkeley. I've only seen him mention it briefly in a few interviews. He generally doesn't talk about it, which is a shame. But there's a really interesting thing he does because he doesn't look like an Alexander teacher. And I kind of like that. I think you look like you're an Alexander teacher, something kind of wrong. It looks like you're superimposing something. It becomes an artificial overlay. He's someone that looks very fluid. So that's one thing I wanted to mention. He looks fluid. And he moves a lot. So although we kind of know this posture thing, Julian will be here, and then he'll be here, and then he'll be here, and because he's moving, there is no position he's in. So he's always free. So he never gets tense because he's never in that position for long. And he's not trying to be right about it, because that's one thing. The moment the psychology of being right will make people stiffen up. That's one of the problems with technique. The psychology, it's what we call in the Alexander technique, we have a phrase called end gaming. It means to go for an end result without considering the process of getting there. If you get the process right, the end results are given. So in Japanese Kyoto, Zen archery, it's marked at competition level. And you get no marks for hitting the target or even the bullseye. They stop marking the moment you let go of the arrow. Because if all the preconditions were there, the bullseye was a given.
So interesting.
So in the Adrian'a technique, we're very much interested. We call that process the means whereby. They're all English Edwardian terms. Alexander died in 1955. He's coining these phrases, around the 1920s before. So, they're kind of quaint, but but we call that process the means whereby, to avoid what we call end gaming. And you can very much end game trying to get all your technique right. That's the problem with the whole Troy Grady thing. It starts putting the cart before the horse a little bit. I think his work's great, and I find it really valuable. And it falls into a category in the Alexander technique we would call mechanical advantage. And it's useful, and why not have a mechanical advantage? What it is the mechanical guarantee. Because you can still do that advantage with low tension.
That is so true. That's so true.
And Julian's just great at not being like, I'm an Alexander teacher, and I'm going to have this idealized perfect posture, and I'm going to be here. Like, no, it's here. So there's nothing. You're not going to hurt yourself because you're never in any position for long enough to hold it for it to become painful. So it's looking at that fluidity. So I thought I had a moment back because I keep talking about mounting just because he's such an easy person for me to use as a reference point. I've often given the analogy, you can have two dancers and they both know the choreography perfectly. And everyone could have this visual experience. They know it when they see it. We won't have language for it. We can't say this is why in linguistic terms, but we all know it when we see it. One of them looks like an artist, and one of them looks like an athlete. And that's, whatever that is that your brain recognizes that, you want to start teaching your brain to recognize that in other guitar players. You'll get more value from that, understanding the inner experience they're having, than you will ever get from worrying about the angles of their pick and what the things do.
That is, okay, I don't know whether you saw the photos, but I recently went for the Alternative Guitar Summit Camp. Is this crazy guitar camp with basically almost all my heroes in one place. John Scofield, Laney Stone.
That was amazing.
It was insane. It was. I mean, it is an investment, but I managed to get a scholarship, so it helped cover my expenses for the time. So I applied for a scholarship. So they were very kind to extend me a scholarship. But the point is, I went there and I saw Mike Stern. And Mike Stern, are you aware that he injured himself?
No, I wasn't actually.
So Mike Stern, at some point, I don't know, a few years ago, apparently, you can Google and find the news. He, after a show in New York, he fell right in the snow and hurt his hands badly. So meaning that now when he plays, he has to tape or glue a pick in his hand, and it's in one position. And he took, I think, I don't know, maybe a year or so, I don't know how long it was, but he took some time to regain and teach his hands to play. So his hand is in this weird, basically stuck position with the pick literally taped or glued whatever there, and he has to have it there, otherwise he can't hold the pick. but he still sounds like Mike Stern. And I
Of
saw
course,
him,
because that's his personality, and that's
yes,
an important point. That's a really important point. Let's just say, he had an accident. It's
yeah,
nothing to do with guitar playing. He had an accident. You often see people on social media videos and stuff of people with various physical disabilities. You see people play with their feet sometimes. There's a couple where people are missing the top part of their arm, and they've got a little thing. They've got about this part of the joint beyond the joint, and they have a little thing they put on with a plectrum, and they're amazing with it. Amazing, and it just shows that the absolutes of technique are not the important thing. Never have been. If you can find a way to do it freely, it doesn't matter. And now Mike's as you're saying now, is having to find this unusual technique that no one would choose to do. But if it's the difference between playing and not playing, and you can do it freely, where's the argument to do it?
he still sounds like Mike Stern. And the thing I noticed, I think this is something because I was watching him up close and seeing him pick, and this is probably one of the biggest things I realize in terms of my own technique when I'm doing single note lines. Some of the best players that are playing like really good lines, they're not. I wouldn't call them picking the note. I would say that some of these players like Mike Stern, they're strumming the note, meaning that the motion is not because to me when I think of picking, I think of that whole Troy Grady very minimal movement kind of thing, where it's very like, let's move as small as possible. But someone like me,
I made a small point about that in the book, and it's a very small point. I literally put it in a sentence. The faster you play, the smaller the movement needs to be. But if you're not playing fast, don't make the movement small on an academic basis. Your movement should be in accordance with the tempo or the movement. Yeah. If something's fast, if something like, let's say, if something's slow, I really can't feel the rhythm of that. I can feel the rhythm of that. So your movement needs to be in accordance with the tempo. You actually generate the tempo through movement.
That is so true. That's so true.
And so your movement needs to be in accordance with that. You need to feel the rhythm through movement. And I can't feel the slow rhythm like that. It's just, I don't feel that. But I can feel a fast rhythm like that. And then, of course, there's practicality that, if you're playing fast, if you're making a big movement like that, then there's only so fast you can do it anyway. So there are some practicalities about it. But the word artificial is the word I was looking for. So artificially to make small movements, no.
I agree.
No.
And I've seen it. Like I've seen some instructional videos of usually rock guitar players that are like, because another way of looking at it, I find that some players are driven by music, meaning that they want to create a certain kind of music. Therefore, in chasing to create a sound or a feeling or a sensation or kind of an experience, they find whatever technique that will allow them to express the music. And that's a very particular way of thinking and approaching music, as opposed to someone who is a technician and looking at like, how can I move in the most efficient, like fast, in a very technical point of view, but it's not necessarily driven by musical decisions. And also there's another one, well, probably it's less related to these two things, but there are some people that are very driven by the theory side of things. They're driven by the idea of, what if I use this scale or this mode or this sound, this set of notes? And I find,
does it matter how you bring them out?
Yeah, and I find that when, especially because I'm obsessed about studying, that it's not to say one is right or wrong. It's just that if you look for certain things from a certain kind of player that is kind of focused in that zone, like Wayne Krantz is absolutely obsessed about time, feel, rhythm, subdivisions, and he is, if you want to learn how to subdivide in that kind of sense and have that kind of groove, that kind of feeling, obviously Wayne is the person you should listen to, because he has that. When you listen to him play, you're in that zone of that's the kind of sound you're going to be producing. And when again,
was he influenced by McLaughlin? Do you know, John McLaughlin is very much that.
Yeah, John McLaughlin. He's very
like that.
McLaughlin would be in that rhythm kind of thing. Same with if you think about Mike Stern, of course, I think his note choices are very interesting. I find that Mike Stern is very fascinating. I've been transcribing his stuff a bit more now because I think I finally kind of get it. But a lot of his note choices are propelled by the kind of rhythms that he's choosing. And so when I saw Mike up close, I was just like, and it's not that he is very precise with hitting the strings, but his hand movement is completely propelling the rhythm. That when you do what I would say, you're strumming the single note lines, it just sounds right. It feels better. It just flows much better. It's a very particular kind of way to approach things. And then when I told you so there's the music people, meaning that people are driven by the music. There's a guy that I studied with, Bill Farish. He lives in upstate New York. I was trying to meet up with him when I went to US recently, but timing didn't work out. When he teaches his material, everything is driven by music and music theory, meaning that it is not based on the physicality or the layout, the geometry of the guitar. It's not that. It's basically, you need to learn the C major scale. This is how you do it. You need to learn a melodic minor scale. This is how you do it. Because the music tells you this is the information that you have to find on the instrument. And it's a very different result. And the way the syllabus is structured is going to be very different. It's extremely difficult to learn that way, I find. I mean, classical music is driven by that for the most part. Most classical music pedagogy is driven by, okay, right now you're going to learn C major scale and relative A minor. In the next few weeks, you're going to learn G major scale and E minor or E harmonic minor. So it's driven very, very much around the idea of music. And of course, when you get to a more advanced stages, of course, there's going to be the technique and stuff like that. But for me, I find that it is a very particular way, as opposed to like specifically the Jimmy Bruno 5-fingering thing. That is a physicality thing. It is on the fretboard. It's the same thing with 3-note per strings. That is a visual guitaristic thing. It's very specific to the guitar to get you down, up, down, down, because you want to play scalar lines that move in a certain direction without jumping around, and that allows what do you say the Alexander term was? What was it?
Means whereby?
No, the one advantage. What was it? A
mechanical advantage.
So I have a term. I mean, I probably use it wrongly.
I mean, to be honest, I'm using that term somewhat loosely, but I'm just going to close my blind there a moment because the sun's coming through. I've used that term somewhat loosely. In the Adrian'a technique, we call positions of mechanical advantage anywhere between standing and squatting. So I could be here, and that is what we would call the position of mechanical advantage. I could wash my hands, I could be playing snooker, I could be chopping vegetables, I could be playing golf. But it's just an advantageous way to be in space, lowering yourself with good support, and your arms feel free to do stuff. That's technically how we use the phrase, but I use it more broadly to mean anything that gives you, I suppose, in some ways, I suppose it's like an inner ergonomic advantage.
It's true though. I mean, like I said, some of my favorite players, they use that. Okay, I'll tell you another thing that I found very interesting. Some players, in particular, there's a guy that I like. I mean, Luke does the podcast with him, Brian Baker. So Brian,
he's a beast. He's incredible.
I studied with Brian when he was in Berkeley because we were.
Oh wow!
So and Brian even he was like 21 or something when I studied with him. I was like probably 25, 26 at that time. And so Brian, in general, if you watch his playing, he doesn't do stretches. He pretty much is in the four.
Yes, I have noticed that actually.
He will move, but he generally does not stretch. Not that he doesn't, but in general, he is like that. And when I noticed that, I was same thing with Wayne Krantz. Although I think Brian is more, it looks more natural for him. Now compare that with Ben Yunsen. Ben Yunsen, amazing player. Ben's fingerings are pretty much stretchy fingerings because he wants to get that legato sound. He's constantly hammering and pulling off all the time.
Ben's technique interests me for the reasons that we've been discussing. That actually, if you look at Ben's technique, you wouldn't copy it.
Good point. Good point. Yeah.
You wouldn't, and yet we all recognise he's one hell of a player, and he does it so. He does it so freely. It's irrelevant.
I mean, it's the crazy wide stretchers, but when you listen to the sound, I was like,
but his fingerings. It's just the angle. Everything looks kind of. There's a weird. I take this with a huge pinch of salt, as you say. There's something slightly amateurish about the way his fingers look in his fingerings. It's something about it. This looks like, although he's doing it amazingly, it looks like someone's just picked up a guitar. It's really odd. I can't quite put my finger on it, but it just so doesn't matter. It so doesn't matter. Exactly. And the whole stretching is an interesting thing because I wrestle that. I don't have very big hands, and there are certain things I struggle with, and I've often thought, should I just not bother? But there are certain musical things that I really like to hear, and like Ben does, and I do like jazz. I haven't really got round to learning. I kind of study it as an academic exercise, go, oh, this is all very interesting. And so surely I'm losing my fear of jazz. I realise that actually this is all quite organic. It's also almost a folk music. That's where it came from, not an academic.
It is actually.
That really helped me when the first time I saw that written down. But I do like certain things, and in the rock guitar context, I love Eddie Van Halen, a lot of wide stretches. And there's certain things I like to do with pentatonics as well to try and. Because I come from a very bluesy background, very much. I started with Jimmy Page and Jimi Hendrix and Dave Gilmour, and all that classic rock pentatonic bass. And there was a time, and Steve Ray Vaughan went through a big phase of. I wanted to get rid of that phrasing. It comes out of me whether I like it or not. It's just there, and I've grown to kind of accept it now. Especially if I don't do it often, and then when it comes out, I'm like, that sounds really cool. So I started doing 3-note per string fingerings for pentatonics to try and get a less bluesy and maybe more rock sound. And I just don't have very big hands. And should I do this or not? And you sometimes have to make a decision like, I will do it in certain contexts because it's easier up higher on the fretboard. I just have to accept I'm not going to do it at this position very often. And it's all a compromise. And there's no right or wrong about it. I wish I had Ben's stretch.
But if you notice Ben though, because I have I have a lot of his material, and I've reviewed a lot of his earlier stuff, and I will be reviewing. I just got access from Ben, like his newest stuff, and so I'll be writing about that soon. Well, not soon. He's updating something, so I'll be writing about it. But I guess the point is, when I study his material, when especially he has the series, he has 3-part series called How to Practice, which is very specific to how he plays, which is my favorite kind of material, to be really honest with you, is material that is specific to that player and their personal approach. Because otherwise you could pick any book, and most books will teach you exactly the same fingering. And
you do that because you love their personality on the instrument.
Yes.
Which is a great motivator.
Yeah, and so
not because it's right. You don't want to do something because it's the right thing to do. You do it because I love the sound.
Yeah, exactly. And when I checked out Ben's stuff, if you check most of his playing, especially his written exercises, they're great. They all sound good. Is my point. When he writes etudes and exercises, they sound really good. And a lot of it, I can't really play on this guitar because it's like 17, 18, 22, 24 fret. Maybe up to 22nd. So I probably need something like with more higher fret access. But it makes sense because he plays all this legato, like a lot of really high marans and pull-ups and slides, that playing it higher up would be less stretchy. And he has such a really nice touch when he's picking that the sound is so balanced. It doesn't sound clean. It sounds really nice up there in that register, but also it means that I can't really practice that on my acoustic guitar as easy. But man, Ben's stuff is amazing. It's like probably like one of the more there's a few people that I find that the material is really really good. The guitar specific one, Ben's stuff is really good and very specific to his style of playing. Jimmy Bruno's stuff, the ones that not necessarily his old DVDs, but I think the stuff that he's putting on YouTube is a bit, it's not systematic, so to say, but because he is such a good player, if you do transcribe what he's doing, it's actually really good. It sounds good. It feels good.
Funny, some people are really systematic. I mean, the most systematic person I could think of is probably Frank Gambale.
Frank's stuff is very difficult. It's systematic. It's not easy at all. If you remember,
I have to admit, it doesn't appeal to me from a personality point of view to want to be that systematic.
Yeah, but you know, Frank's one, I have his sweep picking course, which is a massive course. It's like a 10-hour course, 10 or 11-hour course. It's and it was very expensive, and it was very very good. I got it many years ago, and it is so systematic, but this is an oversimplification, but for me, if you want things easy on the right hand, the left hand usually has to make difficult fingering choices. If you want to make it easy here. If you want to make it easy on the left hand, the right hand usually is a little bit more difficult. So it's with Frank's stuff, right?
It's like I say, it's always compromise. The compromise that I really like. And works for me because I'm effectively a left-hander playing right, so my plectrum use hasn't always been that good.
Okay.
And I often wondered whether to just ditch the pick and just go full Jeff Beck, because I love him as well. And I've seen more contemporary players actually do it as well. I can't think of it. Andre Neary comes to mind. So yeah, you could do good stuff just without a plectrum, but I stuck with it because most of my heroes do. But this thing of if you're playing through notes of the string, like the first two, hammer the third.
Yeah.
And that just frees up the right hand so much.
For sure.
And because I'm also interested in tension control and everything, anything that eases up for me the right hand, that's the thing I struggle with most more than my left. I like that compromise a lot. And yeah, there are people that do that you would never really guess that they do that. You can't really hear it. Josh Meader's one. That's his way of doing it.
Josh is also very amazing, and his stuff is also he plays his left hand is very light. You know, it's definitely, he's not fretting. You can tell that his movements are very light, like feather light.
So let's change the subject in a moment because I've got a nice segue. Go ahead. We'll talk about Luke in a moment.
Yeah.
And our mutual friend Luke. Because Luke told me something about Josh, because he's had Josh on some of his workshops.
Oh, okay.
Now, I've got something in the book about all hammers, and I'm not expecting people to actually play like that. Obviously, it's how Holdsworth did play, all hammers ascending and descending, but it's a great exercise in its own right. And it's become a big part of my playing and touch. But Josh does that. Josh Meader does that. So he can almost, if he doesn't want to, do without the plectrum, but when he does use it, you know, it tends to be pluck pluck hammer or pluck pluck pull off. Which interestingly, to go back to Malmsteen, he keeps coming up in my conversations about guitar. He does descending, so he economy picks ascending, but he does that descending because the Troy Grady thing, the way he holds his pick, he can't get his pick round to jump over the string when he's descending, so he's had to find a way to cheat. So go, well, sod it, I just want to pick that note. And then I've got more time to get to the next string. He's just found a way that works for him that he just got very, very, very good at. No one notices. No one goes, he's not picking all his runs out. You know, he's descending. I think that's just a stupid comment to make.
Yeah.
You know, it's a stylistic choice, if you like. It's actually a compromise, but it doesn't matter because the whole instrument's a compromise in many, many ways.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, Josh does that. So he'll literally just. And the thing you're doing is, and the common mistake I see everyone do with tension control is they try to push the string to the fretboard. And the fretboard's irrelevant; it doesn't need to be there, other than to hold the frets in place. You only need to get the string to go as far as the fret, no further.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure.
You can kind of get away with it with vintage frets because they're so low anyway. If you put too much pressure on, it doesn't screw the intonation up too much. But a lot of modern guitars have quite, jumbo frets and what have you. If you press too hard, you're screwing up your intonation. You're effectively bending the string.
Yeah.
And again, mousing, he's got a scalloped fretboard, so taking out big bits of wood between the frets. So if you press too hard, he would literally be bending the string.
Yeah.
If you consider he's playing eighths down a semitone, pretty light, that's the lightness of his touch. And yet the amp's doing all the work.
Yeah.
Because we have to remember this is an electric guitar.
Exactly.
The amp does work.
That's such a big thing. And I mean, okay, as a guitar teacher and as someone who makes so much content, every other day, someone will ask me, what guitar do I buy? I get this all the time. And I always have to tell people because, I guess I'm a bit too honest. I'm just like, I don't know how your hands are. I don't know what kind of music you like. I don't know how tall you are.
That's the question, isn't it? What music do you like is the first question I ask.
Because if you like Malmsteen, you're gonna need a certain kind of set of equipment in order to get into that kind of sound. And same, of course there is, and for the longest time I was of this school of thought, you could play any style of music with any guitar. You could, but it just won't be as easy as getting the right kind of equipment for that kind of music, because so much of this, I tried the Malmsteen signature guitar when I was traveling last year, and I tried probably like 3 different Malmsteen signature guitars, like different strats, like 2, actually a friend of mine brought it to my neighborhood. Like we were just jamming and they were 2 signature Malmsteen. Malmsteen's big here, by the way, in Malaysia.
Okay.
So huge fans. And then I tried and I realized when you use that guitar and you use the right kind of amp, even if I'm not a Malmsteen player or I don't study that style that much, I'm in the ballpark because I have the right equipment with the right settings that it will allow me to get that kind of sound much faster than if I had the wrong kind of equipment. But of course,
there's middle ground though.
Yeah,
there is middle ground. I love the idea of having a guitar that no one can tell what I'm about to play on it.
Which is nice. I like that too.
Which is what I love about the Telecaster. You could be John Five in Motley Crue. You could be Julian L playing jazz or Ted Green. You could be a country player. You could be a blues player like Albert Collins. I love that idea where you imprint what you want onto it.
It's nice.
That works better with some guitars than others. But I've been wanting to buy an arch top for a while called Melody, and I can't really afford it to come. Although I can and can't. I need to sell something first. But it suddenly occurred to me the other night, like, just use your telly. It's fine.
It's true. I mean, if you saw me, I recently, like a few months ago, I played a festival. I played a jazz festival, and there is a builder in Kuala Lumpur. He's the only guy I know that builds archtop guitars, full solid, all carved archtops, beautiful guitars. And when I tried it, I was just like, shit, this is like one of the best archtop guitars I've tried. Not to say that I've tried tremendously a lot, but they're very good guitars. And so I got it on loan from him. So I just asked him, can I use one of your guitars for the festival? I think it'll be a good opportunity for people to see the guitar, because I would buy it, but I can't afford it. So then he said, oh, sure, just take both and play it at the show. So I had one for like a month that I played at home, and then a week before the festival, I took the other one. So I had 2 expensive, completely handmade archtop guitars.
Wow.
And the thing is, right, I think this is the other thing about guitar is that, number one, if you have so-called the idiomatically correct guitar, basically the guitar that has been used to create a certain sound that is so significant for that style of music.
Yeah.
People associate the visual aspect of it and also the oral aspect. But on the other hand, there is I mean, I can play. I most often I play jazz with this, but the thing is, I know I know kind of the touch and sound production needed to get a certain kind of jazz sound. Of course, for the general audience, when you see a jazz person play an archtop guitar, it suddenly is like super legit. Like you must be playing jazz. That's a jazz guitar, you know. I remember
that's kind of why I don't want a jazz box, because it limits what you're going to do, and it's only going to get used for that. I mean, so I'm actually looking at an Epiphone Sheraton as an option, because it kind of looks the part. It's a bit thinner as well, which I think is more comfortable.
Yeah.
But I mean, I was watching some old Rush footage. I love Rush, and Alex Lifeson used to play semi-hollows. And I was thinking, if I got Sheraton, I could equally fulfill my Rush addiction as my Grant Green addiction.
That's so good.
Because it's semi-hollow, it kind of looks the part. I like the new one. They did a model last year that I'm looking at. It's actually got mini humbuckers rather than the bigger ones, which means it will work better for not jazz stuff. And for jazz stuff, it's fine anyway, because it's just folded. And it's got a full tailpiece at the end, like a jazz box would.
Nice.
So it kind of fits in all these little areas where I could use it for this, I could use it for that. And I like that idea that you don't know what someone's going to play. But I really like until I sell this other, because I'm selling a Charvel to fund it. And I've just been umming and ahhing what to use the money for. And I had three choices. We're going to get into Luke, which we can. This might cause another conversation. One is to get the Sheraton. Two is to buy a replacement neck for my telly, because it's got the old 7.25 radius. It's a 52 reissue. And I'm not a big fan of that anymore. I like really flat fretboard radius. And Fender do a really nice replacement neck, which is roasted in a maple and 12-inch radius. I think I might not do that, because I was playing it last night before Melody. I actually don't mind it so much before Melody. I don't like its lead playing. Well, at least in a rock or blues context, I don't like it. But actually, for the time being, for Paul Melody, I'm kind of okay with that. And the other option is a Scrambler. Especially for affordability, the new essentials. And that gets you onto the whole ergonomics conversation. And I don't think they are, within reason. I really like the body shape.
The essentials?
Scrambler.
Okay, yeah. How much are those?
For me, it's about £1,000.
Okay.
Which is a little more than I can afford at the moment selling the other one. So I'd be looking to get a second-hand one. So I've got some on my side for people to start selling them second. I love, when it comes to ergonomics, I don't really believe in ergonomics, but I do love the body shape. It's practical and it's common sense for it to sit in a certain way. I do like it to be semi-classical. I like that. As Andre Flood, I know we're talking about forward cameras rolled. If you weren't familiar with them, should look them up. He likes his Scrambler. He likes to generally have what he calls a 45-degree-ish angle, and I'm similar. I kind of like that too. And the Scrambler sits really nicely on the knee without a strap. It's great for sitting around on the sofa and stuff. And I'd love one for that. I kind of want one as well for marketing purposes, for what I do as a living, because people who are interested in Scramblers are interested in ergonomics, they're interested in their posture.
Yeah, you're right.
And I'm like, is that the right reason to buy one or not? Can I justify that?
It is an additional reason that makes it compelling for your context.
Yeah, but I really like the body shape and the balance of it. A well-balanced instrument is about as ergonomic as interesting I will take. Years ago, I sold a Teddy Deluxe because it had the big 70s. It was an original 70s one. I sold it for $2 less. Because a few months later, they got really popular again. I could probably sold it twice as much. Never mind. But it was very neck heavy. And I just said, I don't want to be spending any effort lifting the neck up. And that's a very nice thing about Strangberg. I mean, this is my Van Halen guitar. I mean, with a strap, it sits fine. I'm not going to complain. You can get a bit too funny about these things. I mean, so if you've got a really bad injury, sometimes it's worthwhile being really funny and anal about these things. Get it just right. There's nothing wrong with that. But the enduro there kind of skin completely. I don't think they should get rid of it, by the way. because some people really like it, and if they like it, that legitimizes it. But many people don't. So it can't be ergonomic if it doesn't suit everyone. And that's the thing about ergonomics, it can't suit everyone. And I actually think, weirdly, it's a mental crutch, because there's nothing it can make you do that you can't do by your own choice.
Such a good point.
I can put my thumb wherever I damn please. I don't need that neck to tell me where I should put my. Yeah. And if you're good enough on guitar, and let's face it, there's a demographic with the Strambo players, usually pretty damn good technically high. They probably don't need to be told where their thumb needs to go anyway. They're good enough. They know what they're doing. But I think it's great marketing. There are enough people that love it. There's absolutely genuine reasons to keep it going. It's nice to have different things on the market. I'm all for that. I'm just a little bit more realistic about realities of it. And having said that, I want one. So there you go.
There you go. You're probably going to get one at some point.
Yeah. So I'm always thinking like a few years ahead. What I'm going to sell next? What am I going to buy next? What do I want? We're the same. Tell you what, let's get back to Luke. How do you know Luke?
Oh yeah. Let's circle, and then we'll probably end in like 10 minutes or so, because we've gone quite a fair bit. No, you said something.
We did say we both talk too much, didn't we? Before we started, we both talk too much.
That's why people who talk too much. That's why you should do a podcast, because you mentioned something about what, Luke? Is it
Luke? Yeah. How do you know Luke?
I think I bought the first Tim Lurch book. I think that was I mean, I know him from the Guitar Vivo thing, because he was doing all the kind of like, I guess like, I don't know what you call it. It's not seminar, like when he did the whole bunch of guitar players all, like doing like workshops or online things. So I know
me.
Oh. So when he did that, right, I know that it happened. But because of the time zone, I never watched it. I was just I was aware that it happened, because it's always like 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. here usually.
Right. Yeah.
Because of Europe time zone is a bit weird. It's not. See, US. Okay, if it's 9 a.m., it's 9 p.m. over there. If it's 9 a.m. there, it's 9 p.m. East Coast. I mean, West Coast, there's a bit of a time difference. But Europe can be very weird in terms of when things are happening. And so I remember watching that. He's just getting all these amazing players on his.
No.
Yeah, so I was just like, you got this guy and this guy and this guy. Like, it's just like, I was just like, how are you getting so many people on in on this? And he got John Stowell, and so basically, I think what happened was a lot of the people that I follow were suddenly part of his thing. And later on, I bought the Tim Lurch book, because that was the first book that he published.
Yes.
And
mine was the second.
So what happened was, I reviewed the Tim Lurch book, and then Luke was looking for like basically, I think, beta readers or test group readers.
Yeah.
So I got my copy on my computer, the one I have open on my preview here, is test group effortless guitar test group PDF. And because I think because he knew I did reviews, and I reviewed yours, and not every single release, but there were quite a number of the releases that he eventually he just sent me advanced review copies, including this one that's not out yet, which is amazing. It's coming out soon, but I don't have.
Are we allowed to? Have a taster?
I'm not going to mention what it is, but I got to say, the one coming up that I've seen the early copy. It's amazing. I'm still.
He sometimes tells me just we were chatting. He'll say, "Oh, by the way, I got this coming out," but not always.
Yeah, but this one he actually sent to me months ago, and when I saw, because see, the thing is, there were a few times, because we did have a call. I did have a call with him just to hang out and talk.
I might know who it is.
Okay.
Does he have a signature guitar?
I don't think he has a signature guitar, but he.
Okay, maybe not going to say the same person I'm thinking of. I'll ask you when we stop recording.
But I mean, when he told me that and I saw it, I was just like, wow, it's crazy. And the thing, we had a call and we were chit-chatting about books and stuff, and I recommended him some books that he's never heard of, and so
Right.
so that's how I know him. And I was for a while at the beginning I was subscribed to the Guitar Vivo website that he archived not all but a lot of the sessions that he did. And of course, because he did the thing with Brian, I was very impressed, because Brian doesn't really do social media really. I mean,
No.
there was a point when he did it, but he doesn't really now. So
I think Luke must have reached out to him and said, "Look, you can do what you want to do."
yeah, and I guess so, and whatever, because Brian is speaking to a very small, specific demographic of people that are obsessive about music and philosophy, because it's not for everyone to listen to 2 hours about rhythm, 2 hours about harmony, 2 hours about the history of classical music and how
Isn't it?
yeah.
Oh, I thought we all did that.
Yeah, it's a very
We are a small demographic, aren't we?
We are a small demographic, because I mean, I was at, when I went to the Alternative Guitar Summit, there's 89 people there, and I was looking
Right.
at everyone. I was just thinking to myself, this is the hardcore demographic of people that like Mike Stern. I mean, because it means that you have to take, for a lot of people work, right? They have normal jobs. They have to take a week off, at least more than a week, at least a week, because you have to take 1 day to fly in and another day to fly out if you're not extending your stay. And that's quite a commitment to take a week off to hang out with guitar players. But it is a very specific audience, Anyway, I guess, yeah, that's how I know Luke. So we're in touch, but I'm just impressed at his work ethic. He just constantly has stuff out. And I haven't actually. I have an overdue review. I have the second Tim Lurch book that he did. I've been meaning to review it. I've just been so swamped, and I have a whole bunch of. I can show you some of the stuff here that is not out yet. The one I got sent. This is actually really good. This is the Rick Peckham book, the Berkeley book.
Okay.
So Rick was one of my professors at Berkeley. So he sent me a copy while I was in the U.S. because it was released when I was there. And so he said, "Do you have a U.S. mailing address? I can send it to you." I was like, I had to ask my friend that was at the last stop of the trip, because I was there for 5 weeks. So I wasn't at any place very long. So he sent to my friend in San Francisco. A friend of mine in Singapore gave me this book, which I'm going to write about at some point, which is also very good. It's a
The light was shining off. I was just trying to read it. Yeah,
I had to get it. This one is actually Guitar Vivo, but interestingly enough, I didn't get it from Luke. I got it from someone. I got it from another friend who is.
I watched Joanne's workshop. That was the kind of the release for the book, actually, for that one.
Yeah, interesting. And this one is
actually,
apparently the writer is in Singapore. Dan Hawkins. He's based in Singapore.
I've seen his stuff on YouTube. And weirdly, I haven't played bass for ages. I played my bass last night. The only reason being was I was looking for something in the cupboard that it was in the way of. So I had to move out of the way to get in the cupboard. And I picked it up and went, I was having a quick play. I haven't played this for ages.
Anyways, so I have these books, and oh dude, oh man, these two are interesting. I also get review copies of CDs. There's not this one, but this one should be really cool. This is you can't really see it, but it's it's one of the jazz albums and stuff like that. Anyway, but this one has Ben Monder on it, and then I have another one. So these are all my backlog stuff. This is a new record coming out, Yamandu Costa, ACT. So I have a whole bunch of backlog. Well, this one, the CDs are not backlog because they're not out yet. So I'm still okay on the time. But I get sent stuff, and sometimes I request for stuff to see whether any of the publishers or the writers are open to reviews. And guess what, man? I got another guitar that I just got sent. So I have another guitar that this past few months, I got sent 4 guitars.
I need to change what I'm doing. I want to be sent 3 guitars.
You know what? You know one guitar that's particularly comfortable, right? Yeah, I tell my students this. I mean, I guess part of the benefit of creating content is the fact that once, and it's not even a numbers thing so much, because once you get, I think, in the right demographic of people, I think actually, to be honest, I think you probably could get sent gear if you do content, because from a lack of a better term, ergonomic perspective, I think some of the newer guitars are kind of aiming for that. This is the Adrian'a guitar. It's the shortest guitar. It's shortest scale. It has a speaker on it. You can press here, and there's a volume and stuff like that, and it's rechargeable, and you can record it. I need to change the strings. But the thing is, this guitar is actually really comfortable, because you can see how small it is compared to my.
Yeah.
And then you can change, I think, which one effect is this? That's a delay. Anyway, I got sent another guitar. I won't say which one, because I'm going to do a reveal on what the guitar is.
Well, look forward to seeing that.
But I got sent not this one. This one I've had for a while, but I got sent another guitar, and I still haven't unboxed it. And it's I think the thing is that if you start creating content and you draw a certain kind of audience, that where is kind of the target audience of that particular company, or the kind of market that people who watch my videos are probably, some of them might buy this guitar because it's actually nice. It's not the best sounding, but it is extremely comfortable because it's small. Like this one, I would bring this for travel, because literally it came with check out how small the case is. It comes with
there's so many of us. I mean, I said bedroom guitarist at the moment. I'm actually an attic guitarist.
Attic guitarist is nice.
But a lot of my play is just around the house.
Yeah.
So comfort is almost more important to me than sound, because it's being recorded.
I mean, you check it out. I mean, it's so freaking small, and the thing is, right? Exactly, because I'm playing at home, right? The time I really care about sound production, really like at a very high level, is when I'm doing a show. But at home, exactly. I'm trying to find it's the same, I guess, the same challenge I have with Dreadnought guitars. I think they're just too big. They're just.
I agree. They sound great. They sound great, but I will never. But I've never bought one because I can't deal with the comfort or lack of.
I can't. So like I have the Dreadnought. They send Harmony Guitars sent me the Dreadnought.
I've got long arms, and I still find it. How short people can? I don't know.
I don't know. And I've seen really small petite people play Dreadnoughts, and that's the thing. And I guess that's the thing as well. From a sound perspective, it's a brilliant guitar because it has a particular sound that you've heard on recordings. But from just my body, from my comfort, I think the only time I will use the Dreadnought is if I'm recording something where I need a particular sound. But for me to on a normal day, I feel like playing guitar, I'm gonna get a Dreadnought. Probably not. But for recording,
I did buy the best sounding acoustic I've ever heard ever, because it was a Dreadnought. And there's some part of my mind has often thought, was that a stupid mistake?
What brand was it? Was it a Martin or something?
It was a Guild. That was a Guild.
Oh, Guild, nice.
Yeah, I like Guilds actually. I used to have a Guild parlor guitar for ages. I sold it to a friend in the end, but well, I lent it to someone. It was an M120, the Nick Drake style one. I'm a big Nick Drake fan. So I bought it. So that's why I bought it. And I lent it to someone, and they had it for so long, it kind of started feeling like it was their guitar. So I said, look, just buy it off me. I've recently bought a Taylor. I never expected to. I was going to buy another parlor.
Taylor do you get?
Well, I don't know much about Taylors because they were always out of my price range. This one was ex demo. It just fit certain parameters. I like, oh, that's good price, and I like the specs on it.
What shape is it?
So it's it's a single cut, I think. Okay. Or is it? No, it's not. It's not a single cut. No, it's not. It's the smaller body. It's not as small as a parlor. Bigger than a parlor, but
is it a big baby or?
No, it's slightly bigger than that.
Okay.
And it's got this really cool thing. And I thought this was just gimmick until I actually went to the shop and put my arm around it. It's got a bevel.
Oh, the bevel. Yeah, I've seen those. Yeah.
It's so good.
Those bevels are actually really nice. I have one of my guitars, which is a Singaporean company, Maestro. It has a bevel. It was the first guitar I got that had a bevel, and it's nice because it doesn't have that pokey.
Yeah. So I have a client student who's a classical guitarist in San Diego, and he was floating the shoulder too much, and it's causing a lot of pain here. And I said, you really need to let it hang more. Of course, he wasn't, because it cuts in.
Oh, okay.
And then I said to him, look, why don't you? And I've seen other players do this, not that often. Get a cloth to put under there. And he said, do you know what? But I already do that. But I only do it because I've got a guitar that's very expensive, and I've never even heard this being a thing on classical guitars. But it's French polished, French lacquer, and it rubs off if you're not careful. So he puts it on there to protect it.
Not for comfort, but to protect the guitar.
Yeah, protect the guitar. And then so he's like, well, I'm with it. Why can't I'll just start doing it with all my guitars? And it made a big difference for him. And we solved that problem for him with a couple of other Alexander things in mind. But from a practical point of view,
Isn't that amazing?
That little bevel is lovely.
But that's such a great story for, like, I find, okay, another thing I realized as a teacher, that I find that some of the things that I teach actually do not take that long to implement. Meaning that if I demonstrate or I suggest someone to try something, usually it's not that you need to practice it for 20 hours or 10 days or 30 days. It's usually you try it and it has a remarkable difference in how someone sounds. I have a student just now, we were going through...
It's just a change of thinking, and the thinking can change like that.
Exactly.
That's a very Alexander technique thing. It's in the thinking. Your thinking can change like that.
Exactly. I mean, one of the things I do in terms of like right hand, because I started off playing classical. A lot of my technique comes from like studying classical guitar, because classical guitar specifically, especially with good teachers, is so much driven by good technique, because otherwise you can't play the music's too difficult. Same with jazz. Jazz is extremely difficult, except there is no organized school of technique. Classical, at least there are guidelines to get you in the ballpark of being able to play that. Anyway, but one of the simplest things is I tell people you don't need to push on the string. You just have to think of it as letting the thumb fall down and rest on the string. And it's a simple way of thinking. It's just instead of push the string, let the thumb fall. And that is such a difference in tone production on the guitar, because there's no effort in letting something fall. It's just like it fall down, and because there's no effort, the sound is so much bigger. Same thing. My student was we're working on "Isn't She Lovely," because I'm trying to get him to memorize the entire melody and play it smoothly. Meaning, I told him, I said, it's better to learn this one song and sound professional, because if you can do this on one song, you can do it on any other song. The process is the same. And so I got him to do it, and we were experimenting in terms of where to down pick on across the neck, right, from the bridge all the way to the neck, right. And I was asking him, try to just pick down and figure out where is the point where the string has just enough slack that the sound resonates in a big way, and where it starts to tighten, and figure out on his guitar, based on his ears, where is the best tone production to get a really round sound. And he sounded professional immediately. Of course, he can't get it consistently yet. But the point
I think there's a psychology of trying to dominate the guitar. I see that a lot, and it's all, as I said before, that phrase "end game." It's all end gaming stuff, and when you start having a relationship with it, it gives you the feedback you need.
Exactly.
To free yourself up.
Exactly. And so much of it is understanding. I think what you said just now was really interesting, because the guitar can't make you do anything. You can put the thumb wherever you want. But a lot of it is, I guess, like also like what you said, a lot of it is to do with how we think and the way we think.
Yes.
We think that for a long time, like a lot of people will think, and it's still a way of thinking, that the fingers have to align exactly with the frets. It has to look.
That's because that's a very classical thing.
It's very classical. No,
But
it's
that's
not.
obviously not true in blues and rock. It actually works against you.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
wrong technique. That would
Exactly.
be wrong technique in that context.
Exactly. And then at some point I studied. I don't know whether you've seen him, but Grisha Goryachev. He's a flamenco and classical guitar player.
No.
Do you know Elliot Fisk? He's the
Yes.
Yeah. So Elliot. So Grisha studied with Elliot at New England Conservatory. I studied with Grisha. I took a few lessons with him, and Grisha's father is a classical guitar, basically technique instructor, basically for the I don't know what the term is, but Grisha grew up in Russia, and he's extremely technically fluent. And one thing that he taught me many years ago was just to angle the hand here this way instead of this, like this, because he said it's just stronger for your fingers will be stronger than like that. This is weaker, this is stronger. And that's just one thing he told me at one of the lessons. He said, just do that. You'll hold the chords in a firmer way, and you're gonna get better technique. And when I did that, I was just like, wow. Sometimes it's all you need is getting the kind of the right suggestion. It's not a rule, but it's a suggestion. Yeah. Nudge you in a way that you might have not done.
Yeah, allowing you to have different experiences, so you can make your own value judgment of when it's a good time to do that, maybe when it's not a good time to do that.
Exactly.
But not being rigid, not being fixed and rigid in its own way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I think that fixed rigid way thing is probably more of a classical cultural thing, but it does creep up a lot still in contemporary guitar.
And I think for for some kinds of playing, if you're doing scalar playing that requires a certain kind of movement, then it makes sense. And and I go back and forth, but again, not everyone has. I think about guitar like all day, every day, all the time. If I'm not washing dishes or walking or doing some other thing, I'm thinking about guitar all the time. But not everyone has kind of the amount of time has the amount of time I obsess about guitar. Like
it is your job. It is justifiable.
It is my job. When I was talking to Luke, and I think not just Luke, there was a few people that I talked to. Luke was just like, I don't know how you find these books, but the thing is what I do. So I do find really, dude, this one book. I don't want to drop books because these things are just like not balanced because they're all stacked up. There's this amazing book. This is a Barney Kessel book. And I got this quite some time ago. It's just called The Guitar, and it's I wish I can let me show you the year. It's hard to find. It's not impossible to find, but it's from 1967. And
wow.
There's one chapter in hardcover book. There's a few editions of it, but there's one chapter where he addresses left-hand fingerings, and the way his fingering choices are very similar to there's another jazz guitar guy early. I think he was the earliest not electric, I guess the first I don't remember the guy's name right now, but he was the first electric guitarist to have a method book published, printed method book. And so that guy and Barney Kessel, they have very similar fingering concepts. It's from the same era, and that's the thing. I find that the reason I'm so obsessed with pedagogy and books and stuff like that is because I find that because of YouTube and because of people churning the same thing, people are basically teaching the same information. They're just doing it in like a better, flashier way on YouTube. But the problem
I also notice you get trends where they all teach the same thing and then they all move on.
because I mean, negative harmony was trending at one point. Tuning A to 432 hertz was trending at some point. But the problem with these kind of trends, I find, is that for the most, at least when we talk about jazz specifically, different eras of jazz guitar, people play with different fingerings and use different technique because that was the sound that you need to play in some kind of ballpark of that kind of fingering and that kind of technique and that kind of way of thinking in order to get that sound. Now the problem is,
like you're saying in the beginning with gypsy jazz, its technique kind of, it's almost, you can't decide whether the sound is dictating the technique. Well, actually, I've got a feeling in the gypsy jazz case, technique is somewhat dictating the sound.
It is. Technique is the
And they're inseparable in a way, aren't
it became, and I think the thing is that there's also a discussion about kind of authenticity and reproduction, because at some point it becomes people are modeling a certain sound of an era, and it's almost like a museum piece. We're playing stuff in this style, and we and some players I like, they do that, and then they expand it from that. They kind of stretch out the definition of it. But still, you want to play that kind of style. There is certain things that you want to learn to allow you to play that style, as opposed to, like, I guess, some people they get really emotional about modes and stuff. They say, oh, you have to learn modes. But the thing is, the early era stuff wasn't driven by modes. It's driven by chord shapes and fingerings around.
Right. Yeah.
And if you, once and so I guess in talking about learning the guitar, so much of it depends on what you want to play. And talking about your position as someone talking about the wellness of the body and position, so much of it is we view things in vacuums. We view things in this vacuum of technique and speed and picking, and we forget about the music. I'm going to turn on my power now, so there might be some sound because my battery is running out. But yeah, we're probably going to end soon. But I guess I think the interesting thing to take from our session, obviously I feel very compelled to do another session at some point, because we've just been chatting about and most likely I'm probably if the video renders from Zoom soon, I probably have this up in like a few hours. I'll just put it up, because I'm not going to do much editing again. I might
don't edit anything. Push it all out.
Because I mean, I think my takeaway from this is that a lot of the things that you deal with on a daily basis with your clients, and especially the stuff that you shared in your book, a lot of people who are not informed about these topics teach it all the time. So I'm a huge fan of people who know what they're talking about, and getting rid of misinformation, because the internet and YouTube and all that, there's a lot, it's easier to share misinformation, or I guess people want to help others, but it comes.
I don't think it's not intended as misinformation.
Yeah, it's not intended. They don't know.
It comes from a good place, but yeah, a lot of it is advice that seems like common sense because it's been said for a long time.
Yeah,
but actually doesn't work.
Yeah, and that the thing is that because I feel that I've been very fortunate, and I feel very, very lucky, that I've been in a situation where my parents were supportive of me doing music. That's already very rare, and also that I had the opportunity, and I continue to have opportunities to study and be really close to people who are playing at a very, very high level. And I find that people who play at a very high level, I mean, either it being musical proficiency or technical proficiency, they don't do the things that most people tell others to do. They don't practice the same way, which is why they get different results. And so I'm always a fan, which is why I do all the reviews. If you check out, I have, I don't know, about 300 plus reviews of books, because a lot of the best information is kind of buried, because people who know what they're talking about usually do not have the marketing machinery surrounding, or the marketing know-how, or the marketing budget surrounding their product or course, which is why I'm upset when I do find something so good. I want to keep it in print. I want a book. There's one book someone told me recently, and I make friends from all these reviews. I had this gentleman from Brazil. He messaged me because of one of my reviews, and he said, I want to find this book, but I can't seem to find it. Can you find it? And I found a copy of it, but it's like $149 on Amazon. It's like a $20 book, but it's just out of print. It's a very good book, but it's out of print. And then he replied me with another book recommendation, and that book is now $1,400 US, because
that's the advantage of Amazon's print to order. It will never go out of print. because you
which
never
is
have to
great.
stop them.
But that one,
That's what Luke does. Luke does
Yeah.
all his print
which
order.
is great. I think that's amazing, but it saddens me that the, I guess, high quality, very thought out information that is basically built upon years of experience, years of expertise, often does not reach the majority of the public.
Yeah, I think that's a problem that will probably diminish with this whole idea of print to order. But some of those older books, yeah, I mean, I've been put off buying many books over the years. But I've looked it up, and it's been like that. I'm not paying £100 for that.
I mean, it's a good book, but I don't know whether it's $150 good. You know, but which is why, like I said, which is why I do the reviews. Which is why, you know, I try to advocate or like talk about because I spend so much time checking out books and watching videos and reviewing and taking lessons and stuff. I've seen things that very few people have seen, because people just know. It's not that it's not available. It's just you don't know about it. You never hear it about it. And so, which is why when I talked to Luke, he's just like, oh, okay, I need to get that one. And I met even my Berkeley teacher, the one Rick Peckham. He was the assistant chair at Berkeley. He messaged me when he sent me the book. He said I like reading your stuff, because it's all these books I've never heard of, all these things I've never heard of, you know. And I guess I mean, just to again, I'm trying to wrap this up. I guess what I appreciate about what you do is you're coming in with the right experience and right know-how and information that
I think it's a very fresh book in that there's nothing else on it like it on the market. I mean, it is a completely individual book.
It is.
Well, I say it is. Well, particularly for our demographic, it's a completely individual book for our demographic. There are similar books for musicians as a whole, and there are a couple maybe that may be violin or piano specific. Because obviously I'm not the only hands-on technique teacher who plays an instrument. But this one is certainly one that for our demographic and specifics of our instrument. And there's nothing like that out there for guitars at all. And even though, and it is for bass players and classical guitarists as well, I know it's more weighted towards contemporary guitar, partly because that's what I'm more familiar with, partly as a demographic for marketing, from this perspective of Guitar Vivo and everything. But actually, there's nothing in it that isn't useful to any guitarist or any bass player. And in fact, where the guitar and bass specific stuff comes in the latter half of the book, that first half of the book, frankly, it could be useful for anyone. Anyone.
Which is great. And like you said, there's nothing like it in the market for this specific demographic, which is really important because, again, like
in the saturated market of guitar books has something that just doesn't exist.
Yeah, and you're right, because there's so much stuff that is taught and people make releases, but you've provided, and I guess I would say, an opportunity for people who want to understand this in a deeper way, where, you know, maybe there's somewhere where they've never even heard of Alexander technique, or they don't know anyone or no practitioners. I think it's important for this information, this knowledge, or this perspective to go out, so that, you know, people can play better, or people know that there is a way of thinking, there is an approach to that. I guess, like what you said, informs them of how to look at their playing, rather than being prescriptive, or like what you said, you know, only you know, when you hurt yourself, then, you know, what do you call it? You know, all these therapies are more, I forgot the term.
Remedial.
Yeah, remedial. And I think that's a really important part in playing. That, I mean, modern life is like that. People just want to fix the problem, but they don't want to address the root of the problem. And so much of modern life, you know, if you eat a bad diet every single day and you expect to go to the gym once a week, and you only eat, you know, you eat one salad a week, and you wonder why you're not feeling well. But society is organized in such a way where most of the time we don't have easy access to the kind of information or the kind of knowledge that allows you to be freer, like what you said. It's not as easy to access that, which is why a lot of there's a lot of bad habits. There's a lot of people with all these issues.
I think the one demographic of contemporary guitar players who might be more familiar with is the Robert Fripp fans. Remember his old guitar craft?
The guitar craft people.
The Alexander technique was built into it.
Interesting. Have you been to any of the? Have you been for any of the?
No, I haven't. I'm not even that familiar with his music. So I'm not quite liking rock music. I've never. King Crimson never really sort of turned me on for whatever reason. In fact, I sent Robert a copy of the book. So I was cheeky. I actually Googled and I found out who his agent was. So I contacted his agent, and she was really nice, and she said he's a real bibliophile. I can promise you, he's going to read it. He loves reading, but you probably won't hear back from him because he's just gearing up to go out and tour with Toya and all that stuff.
But that's nice that you got a response from the.
But he says, so that was nice. I know he's got a copy. John Gond's got a copy as well. I drew a patch. I got my daughter to draw.
Have you met John? John's amazing. He's so sweet.
Many times, actually. This is a funny story. I actually knew him before he was well known because he used to do a lot of gigs around London. Sometimes it would be me, my wife, and the barman, and John.
Oh, wow.
And John would, it was just ridiculous. So just because I don't know, I can't even remember how we found out about him, but I just go to see him all the time. It got to a point where he was recognizing me because I was always there. So he would say hello, and we get to. I can remember. Do you know Thomas?
Thomas Lee.
He's the Austrian. Yeah. So I went. Him and Thomas were playing a gig in East London with Antonio Facacci or something like that. Antonio Facacci, I've forgotten his name. Italian guy who's really good as well. They were doing an acoustic set, and I went along. And while Thomas was playing, John was sort of, where do I sit? So he just came and sat with me because at least it's somewhere recognisable. So I went home with friends, but we had a chat. I did see him at a local clinic last year, and he remembered and said hi. And he's had Alexander lessons in the past, actually. I found out. And he does mention it to some of his students. But I meant to make more of a deal of that. I said, are you all right if I share that information? He's like, yeah, fine. And I never did until now.
Do you send a copy to him, the book?
Yeah. And I got my daughter to draw his passion flower on the inside of the book. Signed it. He asked me to sign it. I'm like, that's weird. And the reason I did that is because there's a couple of, because I put quotes in the book from various guitarists. And I saw a couple of quotes from him that he made on his Facebook. I thought those would work really nicely in the book. So I messaged him and said, hey, John, can I use that quote for a book I'm writing? He's like, yeah, sure. So, of course, I've got it in the book, quoted him. I thought, let's send him a book copy. So, but, yeah.
That's awesome.
But yeah, so Robert Fripp was big into the Alexander technique. From a bass playing side, Paul McCartney and Sting. Sting made it into the news with it as well when he was having his lessons. He talked about it at the time. But he used to take his Alexander teacher on tour with him.
Wow.
I'm not living in hope because I don't like.
Well, that's
it's so not with it. I go, that's a great honour, but I'm like, oh man, I like traveling, sitting in hotel.
Yeah, I mean, touring's hard. I mean, it's like even for me, like I went on the 5-week trip to the States. It was just like multiple time zone changes, and it's tiring on the body. It's not good for the body.
Yeah.
But it was a really good trip. There's still some footage. I jammed with this guy Chris Wojtek in Portland. I have some videos that I haven't uploaded. The guitar. I went to Misery Neo Show to meet the guitar builder, the guy that built my main electric guitar. I haven't seen him for like probably 15 years or something like that.
Oh wow!
But yeah, he has like I don't know, 5 or 6 guitar. He stopped building guitars, but he might build after he heard me play. He said, I might just start building guitars again. He said he does pottery. He does pottery now, like fine art pottery and
wow,
watercolor. And he's like one of the most creative people. I mean, otherwise I wouldn't end up. It's like a really small town where he lives, and nothing like there's not. It's just a small town, very small town. But I just went there just purposely to meet up with him, and he runs a cafe, and he has a venue there, and really super.
Oh, brilliant!
So it was all really good. Anyway, I have to go, unfortunately. But yes, for anyone watching this, if you watched all the way here, you watched it.
I don't know what you're still doing here, to be
yeah,
honest. Well done.
Well done, but yeah, I will
Endurance test.
I'll be leaving. So Adrian, later I'll just ask you for the links to your book and any relevant links.
Yeah.
I'll put it in the description of the video. So if you guys are curious about his book, please do check it out. It's a really good book. Like you said, say something so you'll be on the camera.
Say something so I'll be on camera. Well, I suppose I should just read it. Effortless guitar, secrets to reducing tension, perfect posture, improved performance, and pain-free playing with the Adrian'a.
Beautiful. So yeah, so if anyone is interested in that, I do recommend checking out the book. I'll also leave the review that I wrote for the book in the description as well. So
brilliant! Yeah,
you can check it out as well.
Well, thank you.
And yeah, I hope at some point, probably when I don't have a serious deadline, academic deadline looming. So I'm writing a paper about a hip hop artist, a Malaysian hip hop artist.
Oh wow!
About his music. He's, believe it or not, this guy, his stage name is Ultimate, Altimet. He is now a politician. He actually represents an area in Kuala Lumpur where I used to live, and so he's busy being a politician. But prior to that, he had, I think he had 5 solo records as a solo rap artist. He's one of the biggest hip hop artists in Malaysia. So I'm writing a paper about the music in his last 4 records. So just like the musical aspects, about the riffs and the melodies and the harmony, basically kind of like musical elements of his work. And I'm presenting a 20-minute academic presentation at a symposium next month in Ipoh, which is a beautiful part of Malaysia. So yeah, so I'm spending the next few days finishing the paper, and then next month I'll be going there to give a presentation about it, along with, I don't know, maybe 10 to 12 other people presenting on different topics about the hip-hop scene in Malaysia. Some of it more about the community aspect, some of it probably about the breakdancing, some of it about the lyrics specifically, and some people on the music. So last year I presented about this rock band called Alley Cats. It's a Malaysian rock band, and I just talked about the guitar parts in Alley Cat songs within a certain period of their career. This year, what I wrote and presented is in a book. They're gonna release a print version of all the academic papers. So every year, basically, they have a theme. Last year was the 80s, like 75 to 1985 or something like that, music from this period of time in Malaysia. This year is hip hop, and so every year, the following year, they'll edit it and they'll make it into a print book. I've never been, my writing, I've never had a print book, so this is the first time I'm having a print book.
Oh, congratulations!
I'm super.
You enjoy writing? You enjoy writing?
I enjoy writing. I enjoy writing. I recently, I think the last project I did was I started writing poetry, because what happened was, I wrote. My dad's a poet, so so I've been writing poetry all my life. But a few months ago, a friend of mine asked me to write an introduction for a poetry anthology. I've never been asked to write an introduction for a poetry anthology. So I wrote the introduction, and I went to the book fair, and so. And I was just kind of inspired by it. So I wrote 50 poems in Malay. I'm trying. That would be a goal for myself. I'm trying to get it published, parts of it, or probably the whole thing published. So I am, at some point, I'm going to talk to the publisher, some publishers here, see whether they'll be interested to publish it. But yeah, the answer to your question, I love writing, but I've just been releasing ebooks because it's more economic.
Right. I find writing difficult.
Interesting. But you did a great job with the book, though. It's a heavy topic.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a heavy topic, but you managed to write it in a way.
Well, it was made easier that I was writing about my 2 favorite things. That made it so much easier.
Nice.
But we did have to create an artificial deadline to make me pull my finger out.
I tell you, man, deadlines are the thing, which is why I'm gonna go off, because I'm gonna have dinner and then I'm gonna start writing again.
Go.
Thank you so much for your time and your
insight. No, it's been wonderful.
And
it's good to actually meet you properly.
Yeah, it's nice to actually have a conversation. So again, all the links will be in the description, and I do hope at some point we can do probably another session. We'll see how this one goes, see how the reception is, and see what people say.
Yeah.
And I think if we did another one, maybe we can zoom in into some particular aspect that you might find interesting to just talk about.
Yeah.
Because I think
I have another idea as well, but I'll message you up.
You can just message me. And yeah, so I'm gonna.
You gotta go.
So I gotta go. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna stop the recording here. So wait, not the video. I'm gonna stop the recording. Press the recording button. So thanks so much, everyone. But you please stay on. I want to just talk for another 30 seconds after that. So thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, check out his work, his book. All the links in the description. And if you guys want me to do more of these kind of podcasty things, let me know. Who should I contact? And maybe I know them, or maybe you know them. Let me know about it. Maybe we can make this a thing. We'll see. So thanks so much, and see you guys next time. Thanks again.